The air in the warehouse vibrated, thick with sweat, beer, and the frantic pulse of techno. Leo, the DJ, was at his peak, the energy of the crowd pulsating in his chest. Suddenly, the music distorted. The bass became a high-pitched scream. A blurred vision, as fast as a flash, invaded his mind. The bluish glow of an electrical spark, the smell of burning metal, and the muffled sound of something heavy collapsing. Terror froze the laughter and dancing faces, turning the party into a canvas of absolute panic. The real world returned. The bass was normal. The smell was of beer, not smoke. But Leo was no longer in control of the music. He was at the mercy of something he saw, or rather heard. The sound of destiny. The sweat on Leo's forehead was no longer from the heat of the room, but from a chill that seemed to come from within. The vision, too clear to be a delusion of exhaustion, echoed in his head. He tried to focus on the beats, the drops, but each beat was punctuated by a phantom crackle, as if the music was slowly being corroded by an electrical current. He looked at the ceiling, at the power cables that stretched like veins in a sick body, and felt a knot in his stomach. The warehouse, an old steel factory on the outskirts of Chicago, had the raw structure of a fortress, but the electrical installation looked like a forgotten cobweb, with exposed wires and makeshift connections hanging like nests. The music of his set was a living organism, and the vision was a parasite. The bass, which was once a comforting vibration, now seemed like a war drum, the harbinger of something terrible. He needed help. The warehouse, with its exposed brick walls and steel beams, suddenly seemed like a perfect trap. The air, once electric and vibrant with music, now had an oppressive texture, hot and heavy. The smell of sweat and beer mixed with a subtle, but unmistakable, note of something burning. It was as if the vision was materializing around him, one step at a time. Leo spotted Mark, the owner of the place, counting money near the bar. With trembling hands, Leo cued a transition to another track and signaled to his replacement, a younger DJ. He got off the stage, making his way through a dancing crowd that seemed to ignore the imminent danger. "Mark, we have a problem," he said, his voice low and tense, fighting against the noise. Mark raised his eyebrows, a wide and confident smile on his face. "A problem? The only problem here is that we're running out of beer." "This is the best night of the year, Leo." "What is it? Can't your equipment handle your sound?" "It's not the sound. It's the electricity." I had a vision. I saw sparks, smoke, the structure collapsing. It's an imminent disaster. The wiring is overloaded, man. I can feel it. Mark laughed, a hoarse, dry sound that didn't reach his eyes. He slapped Leo on the back. "A vision? You need a vacation. Or maybe less coffee. You're ecstatic. The music is getting to you. The energy of the place is at its peak. Nothing is going to ruin this. The wiring is old, but it's sturdy. And if it weren't, the insurance already paid. Get back on stage. The crowd is waiting." Mark's refusal was the first trap. Leo knew he couldn't go back to playing, not with the clarity of that image in his mind. He had to do something, even if it was alone. The nearest emergency exit was in the back, and he had to get there before it was too late. He looked at Mark, who was standing there, the confident, arrogant smile on his face. Leo knew there was no point in trying to convince him. He would have to do something. He was alone. The music, which was once a celebration, was now a countdown to tragedy. Mark's refusal was a blow. Leo felt his despair deepen, as if he were sinking into a sea of voices and dancing bodies. The warehouse, with its exposed brick walls and steel beams, suddenly seemed like a perfect trap. The air, once electric and vibrant with music, now had an oppressive texture, hot and heavy. The smell of sweat and beer mixed with a subtle but unmistakable note of something burning. It was as if the vision was materializing around him, one step at a time. He looked at the ceiling one more time. A bundle of wires, held by cheap plastic ties, looked looser than the others. Near it, the stage lighting flickered intermittently, not in time with the beat, but in a random and sinister sequence. It was a bug in the programming, a lapse, a failure that he had foreseen. The sound of destiny echoed in his mind, an electrical hum that mixed with the beat. He needed air. He needed to get out of there, but guilt prevented him from simply running away. He had to warn people. An idea came to his mind. The sound, the music. It was the only thing everyone, including himself, could understand. What if he could use the sound to warn everyone? To create a controlled panic? Leo returned to the stage, ignoring Mark's glare. The substitute DJ, a kid named Alex, looked confused by Leo's return. "Get out, Alex. I have to do this," Leo said, his voice firm. Alex, surprised, gave up his spot. Leo put on his headphones and played an aggressive, bass-heavy track. With the controls, he manipulated the sound, increasing the frequency of the white noise and turning the beat into something more chaotic, as if a glitch was corrupting the music. The effect was immediate. The vibration in the warehouse changed. The dance floor became a restless mass of confused bodies. Some stopped dancing, others raised their heads, trying to understand the sudden change. It was the first sign that the music wasn't right. Mark ran to the stage, furious. "What are you doing, Leo? You're going to drive away the customers. We're packed. We have to get out of here. The music is telling me we're going to die if we don't." Leo shouted, his voice almost inaudible in the midst of the distorted sound. Mark tried to pull his headphones off, but Leo dodged. He continued to mess with the controls, adding more distortion, more static, the sound becoming a tangible warning, a siren disguised as a beat. The crowd, once united in rhythm, now dispersed into groups of whispers. The dancing ceased. Panic, a silent emotion, began to spread. Leo's attempt to trick destiny was in full swing, using what he loved most, the music against the danger. But destiny, like a track that cannot be stopped, had its own plans. Leo's tactic worked, but not in the way he had hoped. The distortion in the music did not cause a generalized panic that would lead to evacuation. Instead, it created a vacuum of confusion, a strange moment of paralysis. People stopped dancing, but they didn't run. They moved like a frightened school of fish, their heads spinning in search of answers that the music was no longer giving. Mark, furious, tried to pull him from the stage, but Leo was focused, his eyes scanning the crowd, looking for exits, for any sign of movement toward safety. The feeling that time was running out was overwhelming. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the invisible smoke that now seemed to have a stronger smell of burning plastic. He realized he needed more drastic action. He couldn't count on Mark, and the music, no matter how much he distorted it, wasn't a fire alarm. He broke free from Mark's grasp, who was shouting something unintelligible. Leo ran to the side of the stage, jumping the makeshift barricade. The crowd, now denser, seemed like a wall of bodies. He felt the weight of the people, the heat of their breath, and the smell of alcohol. It was like trying to swim against a current. He had to get to the main panel, in the back of the warehouse, and turn off the power. The first trap was the crowd itself. People bumped into him, their bags and backpacks delaying him. A neon glow stick got tangled in his jacket. He felt like a fish caught in a net. He bent down and moved, gently pushing people, saying, "Excuse me, sorry," while the phantom hum in his mind increased, a dog soundtrack to his escape. He managed to get to a narrow corridor behind the bathrooms. The air there was suffocating, without the circulation of the dance floor. The sound of the music was muffled, but the echo of the beat seemed to follow him, a constant pulsation that aligned with his own. The corridor was lit by fluorescent lamps that hummed and flickered. He saw the iron door that led to the power room, but it was locked with a large, rusty padlock. A flash of his vision returned, even clearer than before. He saw himself trying to open the door, his hands scraping the metal, feeling the heat of the flames on the other side. He realized that the electrical failure was not in the power room, but somewhere on the stage. He had to warn everyone. But the locked door, the time running out, and the crowd moving slower and slower trapped him. He was stuck in the labyrinth that was his only salvation. The cold, heavy metal door was an impassable barrier, an iron wall that separated him from his only chance. The vision, once a distant premonition, was now a memory of the future. The sound of metal scraping, the smell of smoke, the feeling of heat on his skin. He knew that the danger was not inside that room, but that the power room was the only way to prevent the disaster. But how would he break the padlock? It was a race against time that he knew he was losing. He heard a scream behind him and turned around. Mark, his face red with fury, was following him. "I knew it was you. What the hell are you doing, Leo?" The music stopped. "People are leaving. I'm going to sue you," Mark shouted, approaching. "Mark, we have to get out of here. The warehouse is in danger. I need the key to turn off the power." "What key?" "There is no key," Mark shouted, approaching. "I lost the key weeks ago. I had to put on an extra padlock. Only I have the combination, and I'm not going to give it to you. You're going to ruin my life." Leo felt despair crush him. Mark's mind was stuck on business, on profit, while the lives of hundreds of people were in danger. But Mark also had the key to salvation. It was the cruelest trap of all. The only person who could help him was the only one who didn't believe him. Suddenly, a loud crack and a bang, coming from the stage, made the two stop. The music that Alex was playing just stopped. The lights flickered wildly, an erratic and uncontrollable stroboscope that didn't belong to any rhythm. The crowd, once just restless, now began to move with more purpose toward the exit. The sound of the electrical hum in Leo's mind became loud and clear. He looked at Mark, who was pale. It was the key. It was the combination. "You have to give me the combination, Mark," Leo pleaded. Mark shook his head, unable to speak. He seemed paralyzed by fear. The music was completely gone, and the only thing that could be heard were screams of panic. The electrical failure had already begun. The lights went out completely. The warehouse was in darkness, except for the glow of cell phones, the strobe of camera phones, and the faint, ghostly glow of a spark. The sound of destiny was about to arrive. Total darkness swallowed the warehouse. The only source of light was the faint glow of cell phones, which danced in the darkness like frightened fireflies. The sound of the music had ceased, leaving only the echo of screams and the muffled sound of running feet. The absence of the beat was more frightening than the most chaotic beat. Leo, in the dark, fumbled with the padlock on the metal door, his heart beating like a drum in his chest. Mark was near him, still paralyzed. The combination of the lock, the only thing that could save everyone. But he couldn't speak. He couldn't move. Leo knew there was no time to try to convince him. He had to do what had to be done. He felt the heat of the warehouse, the dense and heavy air. The smell of burning metal, which was once subtle, was now strong, oppressive. He no longer needed a vision. He was living it. He moved away from Mark and started running against the flow of the crowd. His mind, a labyrinth of light and sound, was now focused. He needed to find the nearest exit and scream. Scream as loud as he could, so everyone could hear him. He had to give them a new rhythm to follow, the rhythm of survival. He ran. People bumped into him, their bodies moving like a wave, pushing, struggling. He stumbled, fell, and got up. A girl, who was running toward him, fell in front of him, and he reached out to help her. She got up, thanked him, and continued running, but the small pause cost him precious seconds. He returned inside the warehouse, shouting, "Exit! Exit!" He moved toward the power room, his mind scanning the labyrinth of bodies in search of Mark. He saw him sitting on the ground, his face in panic, the padlock in his hands, the combination he couldn't give. The scene was a nightmare. The warehouse on fire, the ceiling collapsing. He had to act. He ran toward Mark, but the ground shook under his feet. The tremor in the ground was not the music. It was the structure of the warehouse giving way. Leo's vision, which he had fought so hard to avoid, was coming true. He got close to Mark, who was on the ground, the padlock in his hands. "Give me the combination, Mark. We don't have time," Leo shouted, his voice hoarse. Mark raised his eyes, the combination on his lips, but the sound of the ceiling splitting silenced him. The ceiling, an old and rusty structure, began to collapse. Leo turned, seeing the steel beams falling, one by one, like dominoes. He knew it was the end. He had a chance to run, but the vision became a weight on his shoulders. He couldn't run. He had to try. He ran to the power panel, ignoring the loud noise of the ceiling disintegrating. He reached out, the heat of the air burning his skin. He was going to turn off the power. He was going to try to save everyone, even if it was too late. The lights, which had gone out, came on in one last desperate glow, a pulse of energy that was not a sound. The sound, however, came in a different way. The sound of the ceiling, the sound of metal hitting the floor, the sound of life fading away. The lights went out completely. The warehouse was swallowed by darkness and silence. The music, which was once the sound of his life, had fallen silent. But the echo of the sound of destiny continued to resonate, a terrifying whisper that did not belong to any beat. The echo of a destiny that could not be tricked.